Okay, welcome everybody. We'll call this meeting of the A&F Committee of the Boston Regional Metropolitan Planning Organization to order. I'm going to read this. We've all heard it several times, so I'm going to try to read it fast. You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, creed, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, anxiety, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, veteran status, or background. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourselves to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. Participants can mute and unmute themselves. Ooh, interesting. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. You can find this by clicking either of the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and the window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button on the toolbar. The presenter will then call on participants. If you're on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. If you have any technical questions, please contact Mr. Jonathan Church via email or at 857-702-3709. This meeting is accessible to persons with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards, and the revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to fully participate in this meeting, please contact Jonathan Church at the phone number I just said or via email. Introductions. Haral, I think this is you.
Sure, so I'll do a quick roll call. We have five folks who are on the A&F committee board. So MBTA advisory board.
Brian Kane, presence.
RTEC.
I think it's here.
MAPC.
And good morning, Eric Barassa with MAPC. I'm actually at the JFK Library for the in-person launch of our MetroCom and regional plan, sort of tucked away in a corner here. So I'll be muted a lot, but wanted to try to do both things at the same time, if that's possible. But anyways, glad to be here.
Thank you, Eric. MassDOT. I don't see Derek. Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham.
Sorry, Dennis Gianvetti.
Great, thank you. That's a roll call.
Thank you very much, Haral. I appreciate that. So, looking at the agenda, which I just had, and of course now I don't have. The first item is public comments. Are there any comments from anybody at this time? Please use the raised hand function to let us know. We have some folks that I wanted to recognize as well. Frank Trementozzi from the City of Quincy Mayor's Office, Ken Miller from Federal Highway, Joy Glenn, I think from Metro West RTA. And if I'm missing anybody, I apologize. We're going to do this very informally, folks. So if you want to say something, please go ahead and just unmute yourself and say, you know, what you say. I'd like to say something. We're going to be very informal here. So please, the point of this is to have a discussion amongst people. So I don't see anybody for public comment. So we will discuss the memo. So I have the memo here in front of me. So the memo came out on the 23rd. It was to the MPO board members from Tegan and David and Mark Drayson jointly. And the point of the memo, I think, as I understand it, and this really forms the charge of what we're doing here in this committee, is to create an operations plan that really tries to define the roles and responsibilities of board members, of staff at CTPS, of the relationship between MAPC as the fiduciary agent and staff, and between board members and everyone else. I think the genesis of this is the 2011 MOU between, it was a 2011 update to the MOU, I guess, but it's really the certification process that FTA and FHWA sort of went through. And there are some areas where we can get better. Audits are always fun because they kind of have to find something. I don't take these as criticism. I take these as opportunities to grow. So there's several recommendations in the operations plan memo that I wanted to just highlight and sort of use this as a framework to kind of hold up the rest of our work on this committee. So, Eric, I know you and I have discussed this at length around the process of electing new board members. MAPC and the advisory board jointly oversee that process. We kicked around last fall, maybe last winter, ideas to kind of expand that. And that is certainly something that that I think that this committee should work on jointly, trying to find ways to make that process more open and democratic. And I also want to just take this opportunity to say, for me, when I became executive director of the MBTA Advisory Board, I went through a process of updating our bylaws. Hired an attorney to help us. That attorney happened to be the former general counsel in Brookline, who's now in private practice. And as part of that, we got copies of the MOU and all the stuff that have to do with the advisory board's participation in the Boston MPO. And this woman, who'd been a general counsel in municipalities for years and years, was really shocked to look at that document and realize that there were other towns and cities making choices for this town, for the town of Brookline, where I happen to live. And I think that's true throughout the region. I think it's fair to say that not every municipality understands how this works. Not every municipality understands that they are being represented by other communities. And I really think we have a consent of the governed issue here. Democracies function with the consent of the governed. Now, you don't need universal consent, but you do need, at least, I believe, awareness. So one thing that I want to go through and understand in this process is, do cities and towns understand that they are being represented by other communities? And I think if that happens, we can increase participation. And I think at the end of the day, that's a goal, getting more people involved. And so one of the things that I've talked to Tegan and the team about is having some discussions with cities and towns that aren't the usual players, folks that we don't see. Walthams and other communities around this region that don't participate in the process, perhaps as robustly as we would like them to. And so how can we ensure that municipalities are aware that they're being represented and are aware that the decisions are being made for them, with or without their consent? And I think at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we have at least the consent of most of those people, of those municipalities, to ensure that we have legitimacy. There's other things in the MOU. And again, if anybody wants to comment here, please do. This is—
Sure, I will. I'll pop in and say,
please.
So I think the important thing is to figure out why it is that they aren't more engaged. It's really just another level of engagement. Excuse me a second, someone's just going by. I just want to let it go by. Sorry about that. So it's just another higher level order engagement issue. And just be prepared. It's going to be hard, and you're going to have to keep at it for a while, because you're dealing with people who generally don't have any spare time, and people who are changing roles a lot. And so the universe of people that you're trying to reach is going to change fairly frequently. So just keep that in mind. I think it's a worthy endeavor, but it's a hard nut to crack, so that's it. I'm with you.
Absolutely.
On it.
Go ahead, Ken.
Can I just unmute myself? Great.
Please.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think you raised a good issue, Brian, and I think that this MPO voted this past year to change the election process somewhat, to go to election of regional representatives by folks in the region. So I think that I'm hopeful that that will help address at least part of the issue that you just raised, that people will be electing their own representatives rather than having everybody in the region elect their representative. So I think that might be helpful.
Thank you, Ken. And we obviously appreciate your participation here, given your breadth of experience for both CTPS, the state, the feds. You've sat around this table in many capacities, so we definitely want to tap your knowledge there. Just with respect to the rest of the memo, member responsibilities, roles. Do members sitting around the table? I say sitting around the table because we used to sit around the table. Do they understand what they're here to do? I went through this process with my board members, and we developed sort of a one-page, welcome piece of paper that sort of just explained roles and responsibilities and kind of cadence and stuff. So, that helps. As Len said, people are very busy and they kind of want to be clued in. In addition, the agenda setting process is something that is also called out in the MOU, as well as kind of who represents who and how. It's interesting, for instance, that we had a vote at the last meeting and all of the state folks voted one way and all the municipalities voted another way. That to me is interesting. So, who is really representing who, I think is an important question that we need to kind of wrestle with a little bit. And then finally, length and frequency, and I guess I would add cadence of MPO meetings. Are we meeting too much, too long, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there are many questions that we're going to wrestle with. And basically this MOU, I think, will define kind of how we do it. And there's other things in here. And I'm gonna guess that people have looked at this. And we also need to, really put in processes for hiring the executive director, ensuring that CTPS has sufficient resources as technology changes, and talk about kind of how we review ourselves on a regular basis. So this is all boring minutia in many ways, but it's also the important stuff that kind of has to get done. So I think we're going to spend some time being both philosophical in this discussion, as well as being very tactical and looking at kind of what we do and compare that to kind of what we are supposed to do or expected to do. So Ken, you have your hand up. Is that still up from before? Okay, go ahead, Eric.
Brian, thank you for a lot of that context. I think another issue that we should make sure that is discussed as part of this process, which did also come up through the development of the TIP this year, is just that sort of information process and this sort of process of bringing projects, expecting the MPO to vote sort of on the day of. And I think that's another part that we should talk about from an operations standpoint of just like, what's the amount of time that we need to sort of, see information about projects ahead of time before votes. And I think that can easily fit under some of the agendas, topics in the memo, but that's just something else I'd like to highlight as something it would be good to clarify in the operations plan about what that expectation is in terms of information for MPO members to be able to make good decisions.
Here, 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 here. Thank you, Eric. Yeah, that's very important. Go ahead, Len.
So you towards the bottom of the memo, and you've clearly been discussing this, is aligning the operations plans with the operation plan with the MOU. And so do you envision us doing the operations plan and the MOU emerging out of that, the realigned or the new or the next iteration of the MOU emerging out of that? Or do you feel that we should do the MOU first and then develop an operations plan based on that new MOU?
I mean, good question, Len. I don't feel that this committee has the charge from the full board to discuss the MOU first. I think that the charge from the full board was to look at the operations plan, and then to the extent that the operations plan reveals the need or the desire to open up the MOU or even reconsider it to a certain extent, I think that will flow organically. But I want to be clear that I'm not coming into this to blow up the memorandum of understanding or from 1970, whatever it was, or anything. It's entirely possible that going through this process, we will find that things work quite well, and that there's nothing that needs to change. Alternatively, there might be a desire for change. And I also know that there's important work going on between MAPC and CTPS right now around the fiduciary agent agreement, which is important work. And I guess I would hope that we can, get updated on that from time to time. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, Brian, I would agree 100%. I think we need to have this operations plan conversation first, and then that can inform if we need to update the MOU. The MOU was last updated, I think it was 2011 is the last time it was updated. So it's not as old as 1974, but I think this is our charge to do this, and then that would be my feeling, is then we see what are the implications for needing to update the MOU. And Brian, yes, we are, Mark Drayson is committed to working with CTPS on updating the fiduciary agreement.
And I've forgotten actually about this discussion, having this element of discussion. So I'm sorry I brought that up again, because we had decided that we would do the operations before MOU. So apologies.
No, please. I guess I just want to be clear that I see this as an iterative process. I don't have a desired outcome in mind. I don't know where we're going. We're going to do this organically, and it's going to be messy, and we're going to make some sausage along the way, and we're going to watch how the sausage gets made. But I just want to be clear to everybody that I don't have an agenda here, except improving how we do our business and ensuring that the folks at CTPS feel supported as best we can support them. And I guess I want to talk about that real quick as well. One thing I also want to really try to nail down through this process is CTPS staff CTPS is a weird thing. It's sort of out there. It's neither state agency nor regional body nor not those things. So we got to really talk about that, kind of who CTPS is, what it is, who it works for, in addition to how it's resourced. The relationship between MassDOT, OTP, and CTPS has been troubling for some people in the past. And I think we need to discuss that and just sort of figure out, if the structures that are in place are the ones that support the Boston MPO as best they can. So at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're getting the support that we as board members need to make the decisions we have to make. So.
Well, along those lines, we have to figure out the kind of resources that all of these entities can depend on having, or reliably depend on having, because we do not want to put any group in a situation where we're trying to squeeze blood out of stones, because that's just, first off, we're not going to get what we want. And secondly, we're going to burn out the humans that are people. And so I think it's really hard. Because budgets are a function of politics. And it's hard to know what you're going to get. Especially as you go from one administration to another. But maybe there's some base level that we can feel very confident that we'll have. And then make it really clear that anything above that base level is a nice to have. That's a weak way of putting it, because we want everything that we want to be necessary, but I guess some things are less necessary than others, and to make it really clear that if those don't happen, it's not a deficiency, it's more just an aspiration that we didn't reach. Yeah.
I completely agree, Len. And I guess having been a staff member in the position before where my superiors expected me to read their minds and give them exactly what they wanted, without necessary resources to do it. I completely agree with what you're saying. And while I don't think we can make CTPS a utopia, I think we can at least go through the process of figuring out or documenting what they do and how they do it, and if what they're doing and how they're doing it is what we as board members need. And just to get to your point about funding, yes, one of the last item on the agenda before member items is around subject matter experts. And this is where I wanted to talk a little bit about funding, but we can talk about it now. I, for one, have really no idea how federal funding flows down to the Boston MPO or other MPOs in the Commonwealth. And I want to have that discussion. I want to understand how it works. And so we're considering bringing some folks from MARPA and other folks from the state to come and talk to us to try to understand how the formula money gets divvied out and what comes off the top and what's left over and how does it work. So yes, we have to discuss resources. I think that's an area to discuss resources, and I hope that when we get there, you folks will agree that we should really go through this process and try to figure out how a bill becomes law. I'm mixing my metaphors. I'm using sausage making and conjunction junction today. So things are going well. Go ahead, Dennis.
I do like that idea about getting to better knowledge of how the funds flow, but also what other models may be in other areas. I suspect there's probably multiple models used. So it'd be interesting to see how other areas, not only within the state, but outside our state, manage that.
Go ahead, Len.
Well, two things. When we did the strategic plan, we did a look at MPOs around the country. So I think we can get you that information sooner rather than later. And respect to the flow of funds, I think we know that already, and so it's really just a matter of grabbing that from the documents in which they already exist. I'm thinking it's at the top of either the LRTP or something I've read recently, or maybe it was a presentation where I thought they just laid out in a lot of detail how the funding works. So we can bring in people, that's fine, but I'm just saying, Brian, if you want that information sooner, we have it, so I'm sure awesome. I'll be happy to try and compile it for you if I can, when I have the time. I'll make the time for you, Brian.
No, I appreciate that, Len. I just don't. So as someone who's done this for a while now, I don't know. So just because I don't know doesn't mean we don't have it. Yes. Right. So yeah. I will ask Jonathan and Haral to figure that out. And if we have it, please share it with me and with everybody here. And yes, Dennis, I agree that we should. Just because we do things a certain way doesn't mean we have to keep doing it that way. So let's I've also asked the staff to think about other models or even theoretical academic approaches to this that might be out there that we could look at and see if we could make work in our context. So yeah, Eric.
So a question I have about sort of the process of doing this. Yeah. Are we thinking of, creating an agenda where we, over the course of, I don't even know how many meetings, a half dozen meetings or something, we tackle, different topics? Do we want to, have a conversation first, then direct staff to try to capture that in an actual operations plan document, and then bring that back? I'm just, kind of interested in your thoughts, and maybe tag in your thoughts and others on staff, Jonathan, Gina, Haral, et cetera, about just in terms of the process of how we want to tackle these issues in this committee.
So I'll explain how I see it going down, but please know that this is not about me. It's about us. So I see us taking this this MOU, the federal stuff that we got to talk about in a minute, the CFR 450, and kind of the feedback we've gotten from our federal partners in the past, and using that to create really an outline of areas that we want to focus on, safe in the or based on the idea that we're already doing stuff now. If we compare what we're doing to what people or documents say we should be doing, or that people on this committee or other people on the board want us to do as an organization, I think that then creates, or at least identifies, what the gaps might be or what the strengths might be. And then we can work through those gaps sort of on a meeting by meeting basis, moving from a high level to kind of a more detailed level. But that's how I see it, Eric. But I'm curious to hear, if you think that makes sense, or what other people think. I don't know if Tegan or Gina want to come in here and tell me I'm full of something. Sausage.
Looked like Eric was going to respond. I'm happy to let him respond first.
No, I was going to say that sounds fine to me. Yeah. But yeah, Tegan, what are your thoughts?
No, I think I understand at this point, Brian, the idea of kind of starting broad and then honing in. I think it's important to keep an eye on the outline that is laid out in the memo, that the first bullet on here, because that can serve as a starting outline. It does not have to be the outline, but it can serve to help sort of guide that outline. So I think what it would probably be most helpful to do from a logistical perspective would be to identify what those kind of higher level themes and the timing for those might be in the coming months. And then we can work with you to help identify what resources might want to bring to the meetings, whether it be somebody to talk about something, or, as Len was mentioning, pulling together some materials to distribute to the board. So we need to talk about that and then kind of compare the ask of staff to sort of the capacity given what's going on with the main board as well. So it's just sort of an iterative conversation, but I think if we can start to identify those starting themes, we can start to talk about how to support you in having those conversations.
Dennis, is your hand up from before, or are you kind of trying to come in here?
Never took it down.
Okay, well, go ahead if you want.
No, I'm fine, thanks.
All right, go ahead, Len.
And I guess this is kind of what Tegan was saying, and I think you're thinking this also. So I'm just going to say what's in your head, and that is, we have the requirements, the federal requirements, that should guide us. But then on top of that, our goals is like, what is it that we want to see our MPO do? And so with those goals in mind, I think we need to come up with those goals first, and then figure out what kind of operations plan gets us to those goals. So I think maybe in the beginning, we just spend the session figuring out the requirements, the goals. That's
yes.
it. Thank you.
Well, no, and that's sort of what I was hoping to at least start getting at today, based on what the Federal Register tells us we are required to do. But yes, I also agree that we need to keep in mind our own context at all times. And then I guess I was assuming and hoping that, and maybe I'm wrong in this assumption, that those of us here, and certainly Eric, we're going to lean on your expertise to sort of understand what it is the Boston MPO does do, and then try to compare that to what the requirements are and what, as Len said, the goals and objectives are. So I guess if we could put those two up against each other, you really start to see what we're either not doing or doing really well. And then I guess I see it as going through a process of discussing what those gaps might be or what those strengths might be. And, trying to figure out how we can, through an operations plan, discuss those and come to, ensure that we're doing what we say we're supposed to do. Go ahead, Ken.
Thank you, Brian. What you just said, comparing what you do versus what you're supposed to do is exactly what our certification review is every 4 years. That's what we do, and that's our take, federal agencies' take on, and we are required to do this every 4 years. By the way, it's a requirement in the planning rules that we do this. So the certification review, the document that you transmitted to folks, is exactly that, a gap analysis, basically, of what an MPO is supposed to do versus what the requirements say you're supposed to do. And we don't, and every 4 years, we don't go through every requirement. Every 4 years, we take a risk-based approach, basically, as to which topics we want to look at. But that the reason that we perhaps that the reason that we're all here is that in our last review, as you pointed out, we identified some concerns that we had that reflected some of the concerns from MPO members when we did anonymous discussions with MPO members. And so our certification review, the pages you refer to, that's one part of the review that we recommended that you do the operations plan that's in your MOU that never was accomplished. So that gap analysis, again, that's just our opinion of the gap analysis. Obviously, the MPO members and staff can have a differing opinion as to what is done versus what is required to be done. But the certification review is that gap analysis.
Thanks, Ken. Of course, and that's why it's on here as a foundational document for us to build from. Go ahead, Tegan.
And this may already be clear, but just to make sure I say it out explicitly, that in addition to the federal perspective on the gaps, as Ken said, in the certification review documents, which are very, very helpful to look through and review and to think through, there's also, from the board's perspective, the MOU was established to also set out certain requirements and expectations. And so that's another document to put forward to sort of compare to what do we want to do? What does this say you're supposed to be doing? And is there a gap? So I think both of those are good foundational documents, and both of those have been shared with you all already, which is great.
Exactly. And then I guess I probably should have said this at the very beginning. I guess the way that I see this playing out, and this, tell me if this makes sense, is looking at our foundational documents. And this is what I always try to come back to in anything I do. There's what we said, the MPO said we were going to do. Are we doing it? There's what we, the MPO, said we want to do. And are we doing it? So I guess it's more than just requirements. It's aspirational as well. Are we meeting not just the letter, but the spirit of what we're supposed to be doing? So yeah, I guess Eric, you asked a really good question. I hope that we can do this iteratively. I think things will be revealed as we go through it. At least I hope. But you've been doing this a lot longer than me, Eric. I mean, tell me what you think the right approach, or at least an approach, is.
But I do think that ultimately, the goal is to create a plan, an operations plan, and so I think we do need to. I think we need to have some conversation. I think it could be beneficial to even have staff put some things together for this committee to react to, because at the end of the day, we're trying to operationalize a lot of the things that we do, and a lot of it is just sort of based on, well, that's how we've always done it, kind of thing. But is it, again, to the discussion, is it getting at what the role of the MPO is supposed to be doing? So, and then I think there are some things that we need to just document. I mean, for example, Brian, we run the election process. That's not documented anywhere, exactly how that's supposed to function. and it would be good to do that. When we hire an executive director, like when we hired Tegan, MAPC and MassDOT got together and kind of came up with a process. We did bring a memo to the board to say, here's what the process is, and the board said that sounds good, but it would be great to document that and operationalize that. And again, I think going to my comment earlier about when we make decisions at the MPO, like what's the timing of when we need to have information. So I think there's real value in kind of putting that into a plan where we can go back to it and say, well, here's what we're supposed to be doing, and we've all agreed that this is how things are going to operate. That's really what I'm interested in. I think empowering staff maybe to take a crack at some of those things, bring it back, having us react could be a good way of trying to get to an end product.
I agree. Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, and along those lines, I guess we need to find out what kind of resources staff can really give, and when, and also find out what we can bring to the table, in terms of what we can contribute in terms of information, and so I think we can find out what expertise is the right word, kind of. There's aptitude. What aptitudes? Excuse me. What's that?
Knowledge, what aptitude means. So some of us have various aptitudes. Like I love to research, and the whole notion of finding out what other MPOs are doing, what other operation plans that are maybe out there appeals to me, and I'd be willing to bring that to the table. Because once again, I'm really concerned about staff resources, and so I know they want to do as much as we want, and then some, but then there's really what can be done and reasonable expectations. So I think it's incumbent upon us, to find out what those resources are, try and give ourselves some kind of a timeline, just as a goal. We don't have to say do or die on it, but like, what is it that we want to accomplish maybe in 6 months, a year, 18 months, and go from there. So maybe food for thought for our next meeting. Thank you. Okay, so let me try to put some stuff on this framework. So Tegan, I'm going to look at you and Gina and Jonathan and Haral and everybody. Can staff take the memo and, to the extent possible, document what the current processes are to achieve the goals on those bullets, if you know what I'm saying? I know we don't, and if there are not processes, let us know.
So I will also defer to Jonathan, who has a good perspective of how the individuals on his team are sort of spread and working right now. But I think what would be a reasonable commitment for us right now, and Jonathan, please do weigh in on this, is that yes, we could start doing that, and we might start to tackle a few that you might be most interested in talking about first, and kind of do it in a staged fashion. I think to do it all in one go is a lot, but if you want, for example, to tackle the elections process next time, there's a lot of detail that's already out there about it, and if it's us pulling it together, maybe that could be done in a certain time frame, and then another section in a certain time frame.
Well, that makes sense. So so I also just want to note that while it's important to document what we do, I also really want to get to, is what we're doing what we're not just supposed to be doing, but what we as a region need and want to be doing. So I agree, Eric, we need to have that discussion, and we need to document what it is we do. But we also, I do want to have that broader talk amongst us at some point, based on, what the certification review and really the CFR. So Tegan, let's put a pin in that for a second. Let's go to the CFR, if folks don't mind. We have like 20 minutes left, so I'm trying to be conscious of time. I hope folks have got a chance to read it. I found this really enlightening, and as I kind of take the CFR, which is 450, 300, and I kind of look at what it really empowers the Boston MPO to do and compare it to kind of what it is we do, I see some gaps. And I think it's important that we acknowledge those. It's not a criticism to say that we don't meet every point of this, several hundred word piece of writing. But it is important, I think, to acknowledge that. And I think it's also important to acknowledge that this is what the Congress of the United States has empowered us to do, or authorized us to do, or charged us to do. And again, coming back to the democratic deficit thing, I think it's important that we acknowledge that this is the law of the land that we have to kind of do and follow to the biggest extent possible. And Len, yes, I hear what you're saying around resources, and we have to also ensure through this operations plan that at the very least we are resourcing CTPS sufficiently to meet the bare minimum. And then maybe we can find areas where we want to stretch a little bit. We have Federal Highway and Federal Transit's opinion of what the gaps are. I think we all have our own opinion of what the gaps are. So just to bring it back, I do, Eric, want to go through the process of documenting how we do it now, but I do think it's really important that we also talk about this at a very high level and sort of say, do we feel like we, as board members that are very involved, believe we're meeting the spirit, not just the letter, but the spirit of these regulations? And I think that's okay to have that discussion. So, as I said, I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments on that. As I look through these regulations, I was sort of amazed that there's areas where it seems like there's things we should be doing. We as a regional body should be doing, but aren't. And we're not doing it, not because we can't, not because we don't want to. It's just we don't know we're supposed to be doing it. At least I didn't know I was supposed to be doing it as a board member. So, it comes down to information and knowledge sharing. Safety, for instance, is an area where, I had no idea the MPO had the role, or at least it's supposed to have the role it's supposed to have in terms of setting safety targets, in terms of setting operational targets. And I know we do it on paper, I get it, but as someone that pays very close attention to transportation in Massachusetts, I didn't know this happened. So I think if I don't know, a lot of folks don't know. So again, are we meeting the spirit in the letter of this? So one thing I want to talk about at some point next week or the week after, whenever we meet again, is what we think we are and aren't doing of these recommendations. And I know we have Federal Highway's opinion. I get it. But we as board members need to kind of own this stuff. So I'll leave that there. And I guess I won't leave it there, but I will say that I think as we go through this process and figure out what we do and don't do, that will help inform the discussion going forward of what we should and shouldn't then focus on and try to resource, as well as documenting what we currently do and don't do. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate, as Tegan said, with staff doing a number of things on fronts, what I'd like to do is focus on some topics and then get back to you, Brian, and with the group, and kind of focus on those in stages, and then making sure that we're focusing on those by those pieces. That way it's less of a lift for staff at the moment.
That's very fair. I'm not going to say read my mind and give me exactly what I want, as I said before. Go ahead, Ken.
Just a question: is is working on the operations plan an activity in the next year's UPWP, or this year's for that matter?
I have no idea, Ken. No.
That's a question to staff, I guess.
I'll answer. It's not in this year's UPWP. We can certainly talk about it for the next UPWP, for the 2023 UPWP.
Well, I mean, I would, just to touch on funding, you know, PL funding, for those who may or may not know, federal government provides funds just for MPO planning, and we provide PL funding, and it's going up 20%. So and now I know you may not, your staff resources has to follow the money. I understand that, but I don't believe there should be any reason that resources should not be available to get this work done. And I would suggest perhaps it would make sense to include it as an identified activity in the UPWP.
Are you suggesting we amend the existing UPWP to put this?
Well, I mean, the new one goes into effect October 1st. You can, I mean, I don't have an opinion on that one, a strong opinion on that one way or the other, but this is an important activity. We are going to be doing our next certification review within a year or so, and if that, you know, we understand that these things take time, but it's been 3 years since we suggested that this happen, so you know, we have another certification review coming up. This is still an outstanding issue, so we would hope that this moves forward.
Thanks, Ken. Tegan, did you have your hand up?
I did, but Ken actually kind of touched on it. I did want to also highlight that in the process of starting this, we're also approaching the next certification review process. So there's work that we will be doing that will serve multiple purposes, but to the point of setting aside funds that are dedicated to supporting staff and supporting this effort. It's all MPO work, but it could be a way to sort of reserve that capacity and commit to it. But the last thing I do want to say right now is that we have had a few of the certification activities team staff, which are the staff most focused on doing this work, recently leave, and we've been working really hard to sort of replace that capacity. And so I hope in the coming months, we'll also be ramping up the capacity of the team significantly, which will help us support this effort.
Thanks. Ken, do you want to put your hand down, or do you have something else? If not, we'll go to Len.
I very much want to see this as part of the universe for the upcoming UPWP, you know, so it's not too late for that, you know. I mean, we've just started discussions. I mean, we haven't even finished going through the current universe. I mean, so I don't think it would be outside of the bounds to include that, you know, in the universe with the cost, you know, and so I'm fully supportive of that. And also when it comes to determining our goals and what we as the region expect from the MPO, and we need to figure out how to find out from other people what they want. And so I know one of the issues is how do we do the outreach? We want to do outreach better, but I think we need to figure out how to do additional outreach soon, so that when we go through this operations plan, we're really we're coming up with something that's going to work for more people than us 5 and us 22 at the board. So that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. Go ahead, Eric. Thanks, Len. Go ahead, Eric.
Do you think there is an ability for us to get together in person over the next couple months? I feel like, you know, this type of conversation is you know, is challenging. Well, it has challenges over in the virtual format. And if we can't, we can't. It is what it is. But that's something I don't feel like we have to, you know, decide today. But that's something I'd love to think about. Is there an opportunity to get together at some point and have an in-person discussion on this stuff?
I definitely. So let me, as you know, we're coming up to 10 o'clock here. So let me see if I can start to conclude this. I guess for the next time we meet, and we got to discuss when that is, Tegan and Gina et al., I'm going to look at you folks. Can you come back to us with what we can do with the upcoming UPWP to support this work? I don't, Sandy, do you do the UPWP anymore? No, you don't. Oh, you do. I don't know. You do and you don't.
It's
So,
Sri Lanka, but he is helping Sri Lanka, our new staff person, to get through it for the coming year. Yes.
Okay. So can you think about how we could, can you at large think about how we can wrap this work into that? And then, you know, as Ken said, if there's identified additional funding, let's see what we can do around that. So that's one. Two is, I like Eric's idea, especially since he said he'll buy the burritos of meeting in person.
Sorry about
that place closed actually.
it wasn't the burrito part. It was more or less just like figuring out the time of meeting in person. I mean, I like you all, but man, I mean, it's like, you know, I'm doing this meeting and then I'm at work, and so it's just like it sucks up a lot of time.
Yep, I know, Len. Trust me. So let's look at that for some time in early June to see if we can gather in the boardroom or wherever at 10 Park Plaza. And hopefully, Len, if we put enough notice, you can figure it out with all your free time. So that's two requests, and then I guess let's start with the election process. To the extent that we have documentation on how we do elections, can you bring that to us, Jonathan, and your team? That we can look at it next time and go through it and sort of see, you know, what needs to change. And then I know we can't all do this at once. So there's two other things I just want to mention. I do want to go through the certification review and identify where the deficiencies are. And so I wasn't doing this 3 years ago. So if this has already been done, let me know. We don't need to repeat ourselves here. And then finally, I do want to figure out how we can have the discussion around funding writ large from MARPA or whomever does it, how the money flows. And I know, Len, you said that we've documented that. I do think there is some value in bringing someone in who can explain it if that person exists. So I guess what I'm suggesting is in the next month, this month, we start to try to tackle those things and see where it goes. Go ahead, Tegan.
Sorry, I lost my cursor. I think that those are all doable in different ways. One of the things I'll say about looking at the certification review is that there is a report. And so one of the things we could do after this, Brian, is we could send and refresh folks on where the review report is. And of course, again, you know, the MOU and the regs. There's also, you know, talks that we've done about the reasons why MPO exists that are on video that could be interesting for folks to take a look at and review. So we can kind of share a cluster of stuff for people to think about in advance of the next meeting. We can talk about starting to write up the elections process. I do think that, you know, Len talked about some resources. I could help work also to identify somebody to talk to the group about the funding, because there are discussions like this that happen at the MARPA meeting, the annual MARPA meeting, and maybe we could replicate or bring in some of that. And then lastly, very quickly, I just want to say that I also would be very happy to participate in an in-person forum if that does end up being the case. I don't want to overpromise the availability of rooms in the transportation building right now, because we don't have any confirmed ability to access or use the transportation boardroom right now, but we can follow up on that and see what we can do, or we can talk about alternative locations. Quick rapid fire response to those. Thanks for letting me do that.
Oh, thanks.
Explore hybrid, please, too. Maybe they can give us all what we want. I mean, so especially if we're going to consider doing that for board meetings, be a good test. Thanks.
Understood. Okay. So 2 weeks from now, does that make sense? When's the next MPO meeting? Is it a week from today?
The next MPO meeting is after today is May 26th.
Okay, so let's definitely schedule 9 a.m. for the 26th. And then, yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
I just want to say, if you can give us homework assignments,
yep,
so that we come prepared at the next meeting, that would be great.
Will do, absolutely, and I'll probably do that on email, just because we're coming to 10. How do folks feel about 2 weeks from today doing this again for an hour?
If it's 9 a.m., I can make that on the 26th.
We're talking about, what is it, the 20?
What did you say?
I'm talking about the 19th.
Oh, that works fine for me.
So what I'm suggesting is we do the 19th where there's not an MPO meeting, and then the week after the 26th where there is an MPO meeting. In the meantime, I will, to Dennis's point, share homework assignments for what to read based on what kind of is available.
We need to factor in when we're having UPWP meetings.
That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah. If we could go ahead, Jonathan. Yeah, please.
I was just going to say the next UPWP meeting is the 12th. I don't know if there will be another UPWP meeting after that. I think that will be up to the committee to decide after next week.
All right. So if the UPWP committee meets on the 26th, which it probably will, we might have to move this to a different time. But let's pencil in those two dates. The 19th and the 26th, is that what I said?
Yes.
For this? And then I will share with everybody by email documents to consider. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. See you all in a minute. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.